The season of the 12-team college football playoff has officially arrived, and we're going to tell you what we think is going to happen during this season. We also have the NFL Week 1 starting up, and we are going to give you the picks that are destined to be wrong. But most importantly on this episode, we are joined by the director and producer of the movie Just a Bit Outside, a movie about the 1982 Brewers. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Coming up right now on Sports Talk with Dad. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Sports Talk with Dad. As always, my name is Kyle, and I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man so old he was alive when the moon first formed, my dad, Tim.
I was not there then. I'm not that old.
You're pretty close, but what you definitely were there for was the last time the Milwaukee Brewers were in a World Series.
I was, and I wore this jersey in honor of that. It's my 1982 Robin Yount jersey. It's about time they finally made a movie about this team.
Well, and that's what's going to bring us right into our next interview. We are joined by director Sean Haynes and producer Kelly Call of the movie about the 1982 Brewers, Just a Bit Outside. Sean, Kelly, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having us. Great to be here.
So tell me here, okay, obviously you know the show. You know my opinion on the 82 Brewers. Great team, big Robin Yount fan, but they didn't win anything. So what got you guys to do this movie, and why should somebody like me, who you notice I didn't wear my Cubs stuff today, I was nice, but why should somebody like me really pay attention to this team, and what made them so special?
Well, I'll tell you, I first of all, I have to disagree with the fact that this team didn't win anything. First of all, they did win the American League Championship, but they also, I think once you watch the film and you see the journey that these guys went on, and the fact that, listen, it came literally down to one play in the seventh game to not win the World Series, and the city threw them a parade bigger than the parade that St. Louis had that day.
Are you serious?
So, yeah. That's the end of the movie, is the fact that, if you guys, you wouldn't remember because you weren't alive, but your dad will remember that the city of Milwaukee, state of Wisconsin, threw them a parade literally the day after they had lost the previous evening. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people showed up.
It was awesome.
They had a parade all the way down Wisconsin Avenue, and they filled up the ballpark. And they celebrated them as heroes, because they were heroes to all of us and still are to this day. So I would argue that they won the hearts of the entire city, the entire state. And let's be honest, nobody's making a movie about the 82 Cardinals.
That's a fair point.
So tell us a little bit about the backstory of how this all came to be, other than you're both Brewer fans, obviously.
Well, I guess the genesis took place when I got the chance to play golf with Gorman Thomas. And to explain, he was the center fielder. He was my hero. I hit a lot of home runs. He led the American League that year. He struck out a lot. He crashed into the wall trying to make catches a lot. He had a mustache and long hair, very much a free spirit, and just, my kind of guy. So he was the guy I guess maybe I identified or maybe idolized the most. And a few years ago, I got a chance to play golf with him, and was very nervous, but we got out there, and, honestly, within a hole, it was like we were pals and giving each other crap. And just for a second, maybe, I was not in that clubhouse, but for a second, you maybe got the sense of what it was like being around all these guys and giving each other a hard time. And, from what we hear, that's what they did from the second they got in the clubhouse to the minute they went home. They all had nicknames for each other, and nobody was, the unique nature of this team, nobody was too high and nobody was too low. Everybody was fair game for practical jokes, some name calling, what have you. And the other unique thing, and this goes back to, I think, why the city still loves them, this was a time when the team could go out together. And they did pretty much after every game. And, you could see these guys out, having a few pops after the game in your local bar. You can't do that these days because people are going to stick a camera in your face the minute you go out.
You're not wrong.
But these guys went out every night, and then Gorman proceeded to tell me, really it was kind of drinking story after drinking story. Kansas City, Cleveland, Boston, New York, anywhere they went, they were going out, and I just got tons of stories. And I played with them for a few years, and I heard so many stories. I eventually went to Sean and said, "Hey, check me if I'm wrong, but I think there's something here."
There absolutely is. I mean, I remember the comment Don Sutton made after he came over and said every player should have the experience of playing for a team like this and in this city. He just fell in love with Milwaukee and the fans here.
It's true. We have a lot of really great interview footage from Don Sutton. Unfortunately, he had passed away before we started the project. But he says towards the end, he says, when that parade happens, he's in the ballpark and he's seen all the love and affection that this, fan base has for this team. And he said, I would rather be here today than celebrating in St. Louis as a Cardinal.
Okay.
So
you mentioned there were characters on the team. Who were the biggest practical jokers on that team?
Well, I would say to start, they were all characters, just up and down, pretty much every of them. And if you look at some pictures of, from the day, you'll see, unshaven, long hair, mustache. They were all kind of, when the title of the film, everybody thinks we just copped from the Bob Uecker line, but these guys were just a bit outside. They were outside the norm. They were jokers and clowns. Who were the biggest, Sean? Who were the biggest? Charlie was a big one. Charlie Moore.
Oh, Charlie, Gorman, Vuk, but they all got into it. They all got into mixing it up. There's some crazy stories that they only even hinted at that they told us about. But yeah, it was. One of my favorite stories, which didn't make it into the film, but it'll make it into the extras eventually when we do that part of the program. Kelly, you tell the story best. Actually, it was the Ben. I'll say it. Ben Ogilvy's in a slump. He's in a slump for like 3 weeks. And if we all remember Benji, he was a streaky hitter, streaky power hitter. He's in a slump for like 3 weeks. So it was, what was it, Coop that went over to Vuk and said, hey, Vukie, I think you need to take Benji out, maybe have a couple of drinks together, break him out of his slump. Because Vuk had this idea, he had this theory that if you drank a lot the night before a game, it would actually break you out of your slump because you'd have something called the rubber body effect, where you couldn't kind of not feel anything and you were loosey-goosey. So Vuk takes Benji out, and they have a night. So much so that Vuk escorts Benji back to his room.
Carries him back to his room.
He carried him back to his room. That's right. Drops his key, his hotel key in his hands, and Benji comes out the next day, and I guess not looking good. He hits one home run in Detroit. Comes around the bases, goes in the dugout, won't look at Vuk. Gets up another time, hits another home run, runs around the bases, comes in, and doesn't look at Vuk. Third time, jacks one into the upper deck of old Tiger Stadium, runs around the bases, comes in the dugout, and goes up to Vuk and says, this is not the way the human body is supposed to work.
The rubber body effect.
Benji was Benji didn't go out quite as much as the other guys. He was the team philosopher. He's reading, Marcus Aurelius in his spare time and things like that. So he literally could not wrap his head around the fact that, Vuk got him blind drunk and he hit 3 home runs the next day.
It works. Hey, it gets you not thinking about it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a
and
we
looked it up, by the way. We kind of rolled our eyes. We said, yeah, good story. And then we went on, Baseball Reference or whatever, and sure as hell, there's Benji with 3 home runs in Detroit.
Wow, what a story! So I'm assuming this film is just filled with stories like this.
I mean, there
to
are
a
a lot of
degree.
stories like this. It's also the season. Yeah, it's not just a string of it's not just a string of those. Um, Obviously, the movie has a lot of really fun stories like that in it. But I mean, the season itself was so dramatic. You know, we come up with these huge expectations. The Brewers fall flat on their face. Fire the manager, hire a manager, go on this incredible winning streak that summer. Then pull on Don Sutton. We're gonna go win it all. And then injuries happen. Raleigh's out for the year, but we didn't really know it as fans because he dressed every day.
Right.
And then Robin's dinged up, Gorman's dinged up. Vuk has completely thrown his arm out, but is still somehow miraculously pitching games. And so you had all that going on, and then again, if we're deep into this, and you all see it in the movie, but we go to the last 4 games of the season in Baltimore. We only had to win 1. We were 3 games up. We lose the first 3, and then have to pull it out that Sunday in Baltimore. Then we go out to Anaheim, 5-game series. Lose the first 2. No team at that point in the history of American sports has ever come back from a 2-0 deficit in a 5-game series. We come back home and win Friday. We win Saturday, and we win Sunday to win the American League. And then the up and down, 7-game series with the Cardinals that really went into the late innings. And, the whole thing lays out. So it's really, it kind of lays out like a movie script.
Well, and speaking of that Angel series, where of course I'm watching it, Charlie Moore probably made the greatest throw from right field I had ever seen to that point. Nails Reggie Jackson trying to get to third. Just perfect throw. Tag goes down. Reggie gets up and salutes him. It was just insane. But those kind of things happened towards the end of the season. And really what brought it all together was when Harvey Keene came along as the manager of that team. What did he do that really brought everything together?
I think largely he took the pressure off. I think they went into the season with such high expectations that they were all tight because they were just expected to come out and win, and at the very least challenge for the AL East. And what was it, Sean? Like June 1st, June 2nd, they're like 2 games under 500. They're in 6th place in a 7-team division. And the decision with Harry Dalton and Selig made the decision they were going to switch up managers. Buck Rogers was the manager, and I think a lot of the veterans just simply felt he was a little heavy-handed, and he didn't really have a consistent lineup. And these were veteran guys who just wanted to go out and play. They wanted to know, if I'm the 5 hitter, I'm going to hit 5th. They wanted to know they were going to be in the lineup. And Harvey came in and just kind of told these guys, and there's a scene in the movie where Harvey comes in the clubhouse and addresses them all. And he just says, guys, go play. Don't worry about it. And if we lose a game, we'll get them again tomorrow. And immediately there was an ease there. And he had been with the organization a long time. And Bob Uecker said they thought of him like dad. And it was just, he had an easygoing mannerism that just really worked with those guys. And they were free to just go out and play ball and not really think too much, to be honest.
And he was a guy from West Dallas. So he kind of fit into this Milwaukee mentality, and he brought it towards the team. How much participation did you get from the players that were on that team? And was Uecker involved, obviously?
Well, first of all, the Brewers were so incredibly supportive of this, as was Major League Baseball. And we were able to we had 16 interviews. So we were able to interview 14 players, plus Bud Selig and the one and only Bob Uecker, which was it was an incredible joy. All of them, all of the interviews were so much more. We went in thinking we had a fun baseball story and a fun baseball movie, but we got so much more from everybody. It was I honestly can't wait for you guys to see this. This is they were at the right place in their lives to do this. Anyway, but we got everybody you'd think, right? We got Ted Simmons, we got Robin, we got Paulie, we got Coop, we got Benji, we got Charlie, we got Jim Gantner, we got Vuk, we got Slayton and Haas and Raleigh. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple guys, but yeah,
That's
what we got.
All right, I got. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the only regret we had a little bit was we didn't get to talk to everybody. We would have loved to have talked to all of them, but there does reach a point where if you have so many guys, you start cutting down kind of the core guys that we started with. And I think one of the things that really works for the movie, and what I've heard from people who didn't really know these guys very well, but by the end of the movie, they feel like they know these guys. And the outcome is that much more of kind of an emotional kick because you've taken this journey with this team. And now you feel like I know Pete Vukovich, I know Gorman Thomas, and you feel for them when the seventh game goes the wrong way.
Well, Pete Vukovich is a man's man. Watching him smoke cigarettes in the dugout and then go strike out his side is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. So I'm really excited to see this movie. Now, I have two more questions for you, and I know you guys got to get going, but I hear this from this man every time we talk about the 1982 Brewers. If Rowley Fingers doesn't get hurt, do the Brewers win the World Series?
Yes.
Games
2 and Game 7, easily. I mean, again, we examine these games in detail here, but you bring Raleigh in Game 2, you probably end up winning that game, even though it was tied 4-4 in the eighth at that point. You bring Raleigh in as Bud Selig says, you bring Raleigh in the sixth inning of Game 7. He would often go 2 or maybe even 3 innings for a save. That's what those guys did back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're up 3-1. You're bringing Raleigh in, and he's shutting the door on one of those 2 games. And
all right.
I would agree. The manager of the Cardinals, when Bud talked to him, Whitey agreed. But it's baseball.
It's baseball. So the movie premieres next Wednesday, 9/11. I know it's going to be at the Marcus Theater in Waukesha. Where else is it going to premiere?
Well, the wide premiere is that Friday.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, we open Friday, September the 13th, in 14 Marcus theaters throughout Wisconsin. We have 7 Milwaukee area theaters. We're also in Madison. We're in Appleton, Green Bay, Oshkosh, Sheboygan, and Marcus Theaters is so excited about it. Our pre-sales on ticket sales has been so great. They just opened us up in La Crosse and Wausau for the same day.
That's amazing.
So it's incredible. We opened a second screen in Madison because we sold out the Friday night 7 o'clock show already.
Wow, this team.
Yeah,
I mean, this is insane. And this is my second question for you before we let you guys go, and then we're going to shout out this movie for the rest of the next 2 weeks because it sounds like people need to go and see this movie. Obviously, I'm a diehard Cubs fan. I never hide that, right? 2016, I wept with joy for about an hour after we won the World Series at what was it, 2 a.m. on the East Coast? Yet, people don't seem to remember that team the way people remember the Milwaukee Brewers. What makes this so special where you have a team that didn't win a World Series that is remembered pretty much forever, and yet you have a 2016 Cubs team that won the World Series first in over 100 years, and Chicago has already started to seem to forget them?
I think it's, I think it goes to the core of what baseball is, which is baseball breaks your heart. It is designed to break your heart. And that's a quote from A. Bartlett Giamatti. And there's something about almost winning and the possibility of what might have been. It's like a great love story, right? Great love stories don't end up like Romeo and Juliet doesn't end up with the two of them like going to the beach afterwards for their honeymoon. It's like, and the film is love stories between the fans of the state of Wisconsin, city of Milwaukee, and this team that they so identified with. So, I mean, I guess it's some old dramatic narrative from probably from the Greeks or something. But it is. That's what I mentioned earlier. It's like, no, nobody's making the movie about the '82 Cardinals. They were a great team. They won the World
True.
Series. I guess they have that trophy, and now we Brewer fans not only have the memory of '82, but we've got a movie that really reflects that time and place.
All right, I'm in. I'm
And
excited to see it.
that movie that team has never died in Brewers fans' minds that were there. They will always be that team that you just love. I'm obviously one of them. Anyway.
If he hasn't told you this,
you're not alone.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I was 13 that the Brewers didn't win the World Series. That's how much this team is loved. They're celebrated like they won it all. It's a beautiful thing, guys. And any last words? I know you guys got to get going, and I can't thank you enough for your time. My dad can't either. But any last things you guys want to say about the movie?
Kelly?
I just think it's we've talked about it. It's a time machine. You can go back 40 years and get a feeling of how a city was a little different, how baseball was a little different, how team sports was a little different. And I think that's what's really unique about it. It's you kind of suspend disbelief of where you are in the moment, and you go back in time. Every time I watch it, Sean and I have talked about this. I'm exhausted after I watch it because I feel like I have lived and died the season with the team, and I am spent.
Well, that team was together for several years too, so that love affair grew from like 77 through 81 with the strike year, or we should have been in the World Series, and then to 82 when it finally happened. So premiere is on 9/11, wide opening on 9/13 in the Marcus theaters around the state. I can't wait to see it personally.
We are so excited. Sean, I want to give you one last chance here too. Anything last that you want to make sure we know about this movie?
I think really the important thing is that you can go to marcustheaters.com and look up Just a Bit Outside to buy tickets. They seem to be going really fast, which is thrilling for us. You can also go to our website, justabitoutsidethemovie.com, to get up-to-date information. And I guess the other thing I want to add is, right now, Marcus Theaters throughout Wisconsin is the only place you can see the film. So I really, really do urge people to, if they're interested, just go out, buy a ticket, have a great 2 hours at the movies, because it's just a really fun. It's a fun and emotional story, and I think everybody's going to really think you'll get a lot out of it. And we honestly, Kelly and I we're buzzing with so much excitement for you two, and everyone to see this film.
We're excited. Plus, you get to go with fans of that team, father and sons like we are, get to go and live the experience together. Definitely go and see this September 13th. Marcus Theaters has the tickets for sale. I just found ours while we were talking to you, justabitoutsidethemovie.com. Do not miss this premiere, especially if you're like me. It sounds like we're going to be in for a journey. September 13th, Just a Bit Outside, Marcus Theaters. Sean, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Okay, I'm excited now.
I know I am.
I've always heard about this team, right? But you know what has me really excited about this movie is watching you during that whole interview become a 20-year-old kid again, just reliving this experience. I don't think I've ever seen you like that before.
Look, that team captured the hearts of everyone in Wisconsin. If you're a Brewer fan, you love that team. I followed them religiously. I went to a ton of games. Your Uncle Mark went to a ton of games. He actually went out and partied with Gorman and Vuk after the game.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Not even a little bit. And he had a great time with them, obviously. It was just an amazing team that everybody loved because everybody had their favorite player.
Yeah.
There wasn't one guy that was a superstar. Obviously, Robin Yount led the team, but
Robin Yount was the superstar.
He was a superstar. He's a Hall of Famer with everything he's done, but he was a quiet leader. It wasn't a big, and maybe it wasn't a clubhouse, but he had more talent than you could possibly imagine. So did Vuk. So did Gorman Thomas. It was funny when Kelly was talking about it because that's his famous quote. He was going to do one of three things. He was either going to hit a home run, strike out, or run into a wall. But
I'm really excited to see this movie. Really, don't miss this. September 13th. Tickets are selling fast. Another big thing that is happening this year is college football is officially going to a 12-team playoff.
about time.
Is it, though? I didn't mind the 4-team playoff. A playoff was needed. The thing I've had with this, and I've said this several times on this show, I don't mind a 12-team playoff. What I do mind is the fact that it's still people choosing the champions. There was nothing wrong with the BCS. It just needed to be expanded to more teams.
Look, they want to make sure that if the Boise States of the world have one of those magical runs, they were left out of the playoffs that year.
But they wouldn't have in a 12-team playoff. They were still very
Right.
highly ranked.
Yeah, and they would have been Mountain West at the time, I think. So now that's included in
I
this.
honestly don't even know if they're a Mountain West. They're Big 12 this year, though.
Right.
It's going to be interesting. So the Mountain West, speaking of, is now one of the Power 5 conferences getting an automatic bid. So the highest ranked champion of the Big 10, the SEC, the ACC, the SEC, and now the Mountain West, because the Pac-12 has obviously all but been dissolved at this point with realignment. So the Mountain West is also going to get somebody in this playoff.
Yeah, and right now, I don't think they have anybody in the top 25 if I'm looking real quick. But yes, they will have a team in there. Could be Washington State, could be Oregon State.
It could be a number of different people.
Yeah.
If we look at it right now, and this is obviously going to change, but this is the most updated rankings, USC is not in the top 12 teams.
They're number 13.
But here's the issue I have, right? So say all of a sudden they are 13th at the end of this year. Utah is 11. Missouri is 12. Are you telling me that the people choosing the champions here, the people that get to go to the playoffs, aren't going to put in USC and kick out Utah or Missouri?
That would be, well, it'd just be one more thing that everybody was going to complain about. Because I think you're right. If you got your computer rankings, they add everything in, pick your top 12 and move on with your day. When people get involved, that's when politics get involved. And that's never a good thing.
Because you have Tennessee at 14. You have Oklahoma at 15 right now, where you have Utah at 11. You have Missouri at 9. You have Ole Miss at 6 currently. Michigan 10. Miami is 12. Are you telling me that some of these teams are not going to be kicked out by human beings to make sure Oklahoma gets in there, to make sure Tennessee gets in there?
I don't think I don't want to see it happen, but let's face it, there's going to be 2 lost teams in the playoffs when you get down to the top 12.
It's going to happen. I mean, we knew that the top 4 rankings at the beginning of the season meant a lot, especially later in the season. They're going to mean even more now, because you look at Georgia, say they lose 2 games, right? Especially against really good teams. Say it's against a Bama or an Ole Miss, who are also highly ranked right now. They're still going to be in this playoff, which means some undefeated teams are still going to be left out. And I don't think that's right. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. We need to bring back the BCS with this to really make it a parity.
Well, you look at a team like LSU, they've dropped to 18, down 5 spots or so. They're going to get on a run. They're still a really good team.
Yeah.
If that's their only loss during the season, which I think they'll probably have 2 losses, they can make a case for being in that 12-team playoff.
They easily could. And then you're going to knock out an undefeated, possibly Missouri, or an undefeated Utah.
I don't think any undefeated teams are going to get knocked out.
I could see it happen. An undefeated team got knocked out last year in Florida State. Now, they obviously weren't as good, but we don't know what they would have been, right? Because there were a lot of starters that sat at that point because they were out of the playoffs.
And you look at a team like Notre Dame, who won against Texas A&M this weekend. The rest of their schedule, they've got a couple tough games, but it's really kind of a weak schedule overall.
You can't say that, though.
Sure, I can.
Notre Dame still has to play Purdue, which
They'll
is going to
win.
be a difficult team. They have Louisville, who's ranked right now. They have Georgia Tech. I mean, okay. They have Florida State, who should have been a good team, and I think they still will go on a run. And they have USC, who they still have to face at the end of the season.
They'll have
This
USC.
isn't a walk.
They've got USC. They should win every other game.
They should. I mean, listen, this is also going to possibly bring back to, listen, you're just going to face your conference teams and you're going to make the weakest schedule possible to get yourself into the playoffs.
I hope that doesn't happen, where they play the Little Sisters of the Poor for the first 2 or 3 games to build up the rankings.
But it easily could happen.
Wisconsin plays at Alabama in game 3 this year. God help us. But, at least you're seeing some of that. Yeah, I'm scared.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Do we have to? I really don't want to.
Ohio State had a pretty dominant win. I feel pretty good about my team right now.
52-0.
Akron, I think, put up some points late in the game. I think it was a couple field goals.
Oh, stop it.
How do you feel about a Wisconsin team right now that was losing in the fourth quarter to Western Michigan? A muffed punt saved your guys' season.
Okay, they got better as the game went along. The first half was not pretty, but I'm still holding out hope. I believe in Luke Fickell.
Listen, I'm with you.
And I pray Ryan Day has a great season this year.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. If Ryan Day does not win a national championship this year.
Bigger than that, if he loses to Michigan.
If he loses to Michigan, I don't think he makes it back to his house having his job. I don't think he leaves his stadium still having his job. You can't lose to Michigan 4 years in a row. The only reason he still has a job after losing to Michigan 3 years in a row is because the quarterback play was so bad for Ohio State last year.
Well, I'm praying that he has a good year. I hope the Badgers have a great year and that Luke Fickell start to turn it around because I'm scared to death of what could happen.
I'm going to pick my team's record, which is the Ohio State University.
Yeah, it's Ohio State.
And it's going to be undefeated with the national championship. That's what Ohio State's going to do this year. It's going to be Georgia, Ohio State in the national championship. I'm picking Ohio State. That's a homer pick, guys. I'll take it. But it's a reality of a pick that could happen. What do you think the Badgers are going to finish this year?
We have to. I'd like to see. I would like to think they're going to be in that 8-3, 8-4, but I think they could be 7-5 again. They.
Well, here's who they have. Let's pick this. Okay,
go ahead.
They have Alabama, win or loss.
Loss.
USC, at USC, win or loss.
At USC, loss.
Okay, Purdue,
win.
Okay, Rutgers,
win. It's going to be a tough game. I'm not arguing.
At Rutgers,
win.
Okay. At Northwestern,
win.
At home versus Penn State.
I'll go with my heart and say win, even though.
Okay, that's a loss. I'll give you the other two.
It's in Madison.
They're not beating Penn State.
They may.
At Iowa. That's 4 losses.
Why are you doing this?
That's 4 losses.
Yeah. They could beat
home.
They could beat Iowa.
That's 4 losses. At home versus Oregon.
That's 5.
That's 5 losses. At Nebraska. That could be a good game.
It should be a great game. At that point, you got to pray they're winning because they still aren't to the bowls yet.
What do you got? Win or loss?
I'll go with my heart and say win because I'm desperate.
At home versus Minnesota. They're calling for PJ Fleck's head already after a bad loss. That's a win.
They'll get the axe and keep it there.
According to you,
I said 7-5
at home. You're saying though they're going to have 3 losses because you picked them at home versus Penn State and you picked them at home versus Oregon.
Okay, in my mind, I'm going 7-5 would be a great year.
7-5, I think, would be an outstanding year.
Luke Fickell is still putting in his program.
He's dealing with a Paul Chryst recruiting class still, where he clearly didn't recruit. The thing that scares me, and the thing why I think this could be a 7-loss season for you guys,
the offensive and defensive lines.
Offensive and defensive lines. They looked so bad against Western Michigan. Their running back, now granted they got tired later in the game, but the first half they were running up and down the field, and you guys were getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage, which is not something you see from a Wisconsin team.
No, Wisconsin teams are usually the biggest and the baddest on the lines.
So they haven't been. They
But-
got a new strength coach. It's the new strength program. It takes time. You're still getting more recruits in.
I think
But is Luke Fickell going to last that long? Not because Wisconsin won't keep him. They'll stick with him. But if the Ohio State job opens up at the end of this year because Ryan Day loses to Michigan and does not win the national championship,
if he's going to leave, it will be this year.
to Ohio State.
If Ryan Day leaves at the end of this year, I'm going to be very panicked that Fickell will take the job because they're coming after him hard.
As they should. And I will be in tears with joy
Yeah.
that Luke Fickell comes home because he is a great coach.
He is.
And Ohio State, listen, they're stacked, right? They got a $20 million roster plus right now. I mean, they can just pay whoever they want.
They've got NFL light.
They do. I mean, they're going to have next year, because don't forget, they brought back most of their team from last year. They're going to have possibly 5 or 6 first-round picks next year, and that's not including the first 3 rounds. They're a stacked team.
They are. And
Wisconsin's going to struggle. They could easily lose. I mean, they're going to lose to Alabama. They're going to lose to SEC or USC. I'm sorry.
Oregon.
They're going to lose to Oregon. They're going to lose to Penn State. They're going to lose to Iowa.
I don't know about Iowa. They could beat them. Here's the thing.
Northwestern, they could lose that game.
By the way, I like the looks of their temporary field. It's where
Why didn't they just build it?
I don't
there?
know.
It's right on the lake.
It's a gorgeous location for it. I asked you that as I was watching the game. Why aren't they building this here?
What still boggles my mind about Northwestern, they built that temporary stadium in 70 days. They've known about this project for years at this point. How do you go that long without knowing where you're going to play football
I don't know. They
games?
did a good job on the stadium.
They did great.
I'll give them credit for it.
You're not right on. It's very open. The crowd noise
Yeah.
isn't going to be a big factor there, which always is at Northwestern. But that wind is going to be a huge factor coming off the lake.
Well, I don't know why they didn't stay at their old field and then just build the new one right at that location on the lake.
They got the soccer field right next to it and a
Maybe
couple
that's
other
it.
facilities, so I don't know if there was room there for a giant stadium.
But getting
But
back,
they could lose to Northwestern. I think Purdue's going to be a decent team this year. They could lose to Purdue.
no, they're not going to.
Rutgers was great last year. They could lose to Rutgers. I'm
Okay.
just saying you don't have any, after what you saw against Western Michigan, you don't have any true wins here.
I believe in Luke Fickell. He's building his program. He's only in year 2. It's going to take
yeah.
3 or 4 years. He came in to an empty cookie jar,
Yeah?
completely empty, and there weren't even crumbs in there.
Yeah.
He's got a decent quarterback this year, from what I can see.
Well, it was like Brady Hoke after Rich Rodriguez. Now, Rich
Yeah.
Rodriguez was very close. He needed another year to prove himself because he had just finally got his full recruiting class. But it's why they brought in, it was Brady Hoke, right? That was the
I think
guy's
so.
name. They brought him in to recruit big guys again and just made him a sacrificial lamb before they brought in Harbaugh. But even it took him 5-6 years to build the team that won the national championship with all the cheating and stuff that he did. But it's Michigan. I'm going
Stop
to take
it.
the shot.
But Wisconsin's got to lock down their own recruits in their own state again because they started losing them again.
Yeah.
They lost one other guy, so your stupid team.
The Ohio State University.
So it's going to be I'm giving Fickell time. He's a great coach.
Yeah.
He will get it turned around, and he will, I think, have a Alvarez-style dynasty if he stays that long.
He could, but yeah, besides Minnesota on this list, I don't think the Badgers have a game that you can look at and say, yeah, that's a win. That's the only one. They're going to lose the next few weeks.
No, they'll win this week.
They'll probably win this week.
Yeah.
But then they have Alabama and then USC
I don't really want to talk about this anymore.
and then Oregon
Let's get
and
back to-
Iowa.
Let's get back to the 12-team playoff.
Okay. So Ohio State's going to get the automatic bid. They're going to win the Big Ten.
I don't know that that's the case. Oregon could win the Big Ten.
Nah.
Oregon is that good. Don't sit there and count your chickens before anything's hatched yet.
I can count them for the next few weeks. It's the end of the season versus Michigan that makes me nervous.
Oregon is going to probably win the Big Ten. Ohio State will have to be an at-large berth.
That's not going to happen.
Are you sure?
I am 100% positive. Let's look at the Ohio State schedule here. So they just won 52-6 against Akron.
Ooh,
They got Western Michigan next week, and they're going to show you what you really do to a Western Michigan team next week. We got Marshall in week 3. 3 wins. Should win by 1,000 points.
yeah.
I mean,
At least the Badgers play Alabama.
if in total the Buckeyes don't score over 150 points in the first 3 weeks,
Go on.
then they have Michigan State. That should be a win.
Should be.
Then they play Iowa at home.
Going to be tough.
It's going to be a good game.
Yep.
Ohio State stacked. They should walk away with that pretty easily. Here's where it's going to get tough because they do face Oregon at Oregon on
Yes.
October 12th.
That's the game of the year.
That could possibly
Big
be the
Ten.
game of the year. Then Nebraska, then at Penn State.
Don't look past Nebraska. They're going to be a good team.
I
this
wouldn't
year.
if it was at Nebraska, but this is in the shoe.
Okay.
It's Nebraska in the shoe, and I think Nebraska's dealing with the same thing Wisconsin is. Matt Rule has to completely
Yes.
rebuild. He's doing a great job. I think he's ahead of schedule. It's still, again, a $20+ million roster versus Nebraska, okay? I'm not too worried about it. Oregon's going to be a tough game. Penn State's going to be a tough game.
Oregon's going to be a loss.
Oregon is not going to be a loss. It's going to be a good game.
That's the Big Ten title game.
I disagree. I think more of the Big Ten title game is going to be against Penn State. I think Penn State is being very overlooked in this Big Ten, and I think they're going to be a really good team this year, and I think both teams could be undefeated on November 2nd when Ohio State goes to Penn State. You know they're going to have a whiteout for that game. If they lose to Oregon, we could have a 2-loss Ohio State team coming.
And I
into
would be
this.
so happy with that. Well, actually, I don't know if I would.
I wouldn't come on this show, just because I don't want to listen to you. But I'm
okay.
counting both those as wins. Then Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana, and then finally we're facing Michigan on November 30th for the big game.
So let me ask you this. I mean, they're obviously the first 4 teams are going to get buys. The Mountain West is going to get number 5 seed. I believe
Yes.
it's the way that works.
It's the highest ranked, so we're just
Okay.
going to assume the Mountain West is going to get the 5th seed
All right.
automatically. Yes.
And then you have the automatic bids, and it's SEC, it's the Big Ten, and a couple ACC teams.
Well, and let's look at that here too, because we can't count that out. Like you said, there's not a Mountain West team that's ranked right now.
Not even close.
And so you could have an unranked Mountain West team
Yeah.
that gets an automatic bid.
I think is going to
Which
happen.
means right now, not only would USC be out, Miami would be out. So it's not the top ranked teams. It doesn't make a difference because when they created this, let's be honest, they're like, Pac-12 is going to have a top 13 team or top 12 team.
Right.
You know, Big 10 will, SEC will, ACC will, Big 12 will. They'll all have top ranked teams. This will be fine. Then all of a sudden the Pac-12 fell apart.
Right. Now you got to fill it. And now you've got the Mountain West with the Boise States of the world, the San Diego, or not the Boise State, the San Diego States of the world,
Correct.
Washington State,
Oregon State.
which Washington State had a decent team last year, beat Wisconsin.
It's not saying much. And that's not meant to be personal. You guys had a bad team last year.
Yeah,
it is what it is. That's going to be a problem, though, because, again, people now get involved again where you're going to have teams that get into the top 12 teams that really shouldn't be there.
You know what's happened, though, through all of this? When the BCS was there, it was the number 3 team that was upset.
Correct.
Then they go to 4 teams.
Right.
It's the number 5 team. And Wisconsin was in that kind of a competition once or twice.
They were.
Now it's 12 teams. People are still going to bitch because of the 13th and who gets in and who doesn't. You're not going to please everybody.
You're not, but I can tell you next year it would not surprise me if all of a sudden they take out the Mountain West as a at-large bid. It's not going to be an automatic bid. I don't think that conference can stand with them.
What have I said for a long time? It's not going to be long before the NCAA football teams break off and start their own league.
It is. Okay, here's my question. Say they break off, because that's going to be the teams everybody watches for. You're going to have the Big 12. You're going to have the SEC. You're going to have the Big 10. And the ACC, if they can stay together.
If
Don't
they win
forget
their
there's a big lawsuit against Florida State and Clemson, because Florida State and Clemson want to go to the Big 10.
Correct.
They haven't even been secretive about that. The reason Florida State was not in the top 4 last year was because their own conference voted against them being in the top 4.
That was a stick in the eye.
It was. It was. You want to sue us? You want to leave? Fine. We're going to make your team worth nothing. And now they're 0-2. It's a bad start for Florida State. I don't know if the ACC is going to stay together long enough, but this could all blow over. But where does that leave the Mountain West? of the world. Are they going to try and join? Because I could see a South Dakota State joining the Big 12, an Oregon State joining wherever they may go.
I think look, if the ACC breaks up, they're going to scatter the 4 wins. SEC, Big 10 taking most of them.
Yes.
Big 12 may take one.
Big 12 will take some too. I have no doubt.
And there's your answer. It's going to be 3 conferences.
But then where's Notre Dame go? If do you just bite the bullet as the Power 4 and just say, listen, you're with us as an independent?
Yeah, you're going to have to bring them along. They'll come along, or they're going to join a conference. Your arguments are that they join the Big 12 because they're most competitive.
Correct. Or the ACC if it sticks together. The reason I don't think ACC is because I don't think the ACC is going to stick together.
I don't think so either.
And the Big 12 makes way too much sense because they're not going to go in the gauntlet of the SEC. They're not going to go in what is now a gauntlet of the Big 10.
Right.
They're just not. You're going to be exposed at that point. As an independent, what are we seeing now? They face Texas Tech. They got a couple other
Navy,
teams.
Air Force, the military academies.
Those are great games. They're facing Navy, Army this year. Everybody loves those games because they're traditional.
But they're not like playing Oregon, then Ohio State, then Michigan, then Iowa, then Penn State, then Wisconsin or Minnesota. Even the lower teams.
They're never going to do it. They go to the SEC. Who do they have? Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss.
But they go to the Big 12.
All of a sudden you have Colorado, you have Utah, which is a tough game, don't get me wrong. But it's a lot less talent in the Big 12 historically, at least right now, than there is in the Big 10 and the SEC. So I really think that that's where they go. But the longer this goes on, the more I think they're just going to bring him with as an independent.
Maybe.
You can't leave him behind.
They've got to break off from the NCAA because the NCAA has screwed this up beyond all recognition.
You have to get the NIL under control.
Yes, you do.
It seems to be figuring itself out a little bit now, but it's still the wild, wild west out there. They need to stop it being a recruiting tool. And colleges, just the fact that colleges have NIL programs already is a joke to the system. This isn't what it was meant to be.
Well, and the problem is, this is what the NFL would be without revenue sharing.
Correct.
Because you're going to have the haves and the have-nots.
Well, the Packers wouldn't exist.
Exactly. Well, they'd exist, but they'd be a basement dweller forever.
Right.
So you can't allow that to happen where it's Ohio State, Alabama, USC, Oregon, that have got all the money, and then everybody else is scrambling.
Kind of side topic here. I'm going to grab Frenchie the squirrel for a second, but it's like, look at the Rockies, right? The Packers would really just be the Rockies of the NFL at that point, where they never have enough money. It's why baseball needs to go to more of a true revenue sharing system.
Well, and share local media as well as national media.
Correct, which the Yankees have to sign on for that to happen. And unfortunately, they don't have the Mara family that the NFL had. Correct. And if Jerry Jones has his way, this point will be moot anyway.
Well, if Jerry Jones has his way, the Green Bay Boys and Girls Club will be the richest boys and girls club on the planet, and Green Bay might have to move.
Which they can't.
No, but they could sell. I mean, they can sell.
I won't sell my stock. I have it.
Your stock doesn't count. And I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Pretend it does.
I still think there's more people against Jerry Jones and
there are and it's because of the Green Bay Packers. Because they're like, listen, this is our franchise. We can't let the Packers all of a sudden be bad or all of a sudden have them
not be able to compete.
Like, you can't do that.
Right.
You completely destroy a small market team because the Packers are the smallest market team in the world. Green Bay, folks, has 100,000 people.
Without the Green Bay Packers, Green Bay is Dubuque.
It's the smartest thing I've ever said. You know how I know that? Because you are repeating it.
I'm ripping you off. Yeah, but it's very true. It's just a little port city.
It is.
In northeastern Wisconsin, but God bless them, they show up for Packer games every single week.
Sold out every single game. I think it's the highest secondary market ticket in the NFL. At least it's up there.
Probably. They've been sold out for every game since, I think, 1960.
I think it's a little bit later because the Chiefs are the longest standing sellout.
Correct. I think the Packers
they're right up there.
They're right there. Okay.
It's only a couple years apart. I just think that we're going to see as the season goes on, but back to our topic that we were talking about, this 12 team with giving the Mountain West an automatic bid, you're already leaving out a team that deserves to be there. And if you have Ohio State that loses to Oregon, that loses to Penn State, they're not going to be left out of the
No.
college football playoffs.
Look.
So there's a 2-loss team right there that is still going to make it in. And if they lose to Michigan, they could still make it into the college football playoff as a 3-loss team.
I don't feel bad for anybody at 10, 11, or 12. They're lucky they're getting in. They're not
if you have
probably
an
going to compete.
undefeated team sitting at 12 at the
Not
end of
gonna
the
happen.
season,
Not going
and
to
you have
happen.
Ohio State that ends up losing to Michigan at the end of the season, and they're 3 losses. Ohio State, I'm an Ohio State fan, right?
They
And
don't belong in.
But I would also look at that and say they shouldn't be in this
Correct.
college football. I said that when Penn State beat them in the Big Ten
Yes.
championship, and yet Penn State was sitting at home and Ohio State made it into the playoffs.
That was wrong.
That was completely wrong, and I agree with you on
It
that.
was politics, and that's what you've got to get out of this.
But that's if all of a sudden you have sitting at 11, right, where you have Utah or Missouri with 1 loss, and you have a 3-loss Ohio State team,
They shouldn't
you're
be in.
taking Ohio State over the 1-loss Missouri or Utah. That's going to happen.
I'm
wrong.
I can't tell you you're wrong because it may happen, but it would be a travesty for it to happen.
I agree with you, but that is the issue you're dealing with when it comes to this system they have now.
We're going to see how this. I'm going to give it this year to play out, and then we'll decide what's
I
going to
will
happen.
make my one prediction, and you know how my predictions don't always come out right when it comes to picking sports, but I would guess that the Mountain West is no longer going to be an automatic bid after this year.
And I'm going to guess that the ACC is going to lose their lawsuit, and those teams will be absorbed by the surviving 3. And give Big 12 football a huge credit because they survived,
They did.
and they're going to be one of the 3.
They lost Texas and Oklahoma and immediately started to adjust the way that they needed to. Good for them.
Yes.
And the ACC could do the same. I just don't know how many of their teams are going to keep because Miami's going to go. I think North Carolina is going to go with Clemson and Florida State to the Big Ten. If that happens, the question is, will the 4th team be Notre Dame, which it won't,
No.
or do you bring along Miami just to solidify that Florida market?
The Big Ten wants to be the first truly coast to coast, which they are now, but they
They're
want to
not.
be. They've got Rutgers on the East Coast.
They do, but they don't have anything in the South.
No, they don't.
Southeast, they have
that's
nothing.
That's what I was going to say. They want to be east to west and north to south. And right now they're missing on that southeastern part of the country.
We'll see what happens. You let us know what you think in the comments below, and while you're down there, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. It is time for
It's
the
that time of-
segment that I think can only be summarized as picks doomed to be wrong.
We were so bad last year.
You at least had a 500 record.
Okay. I was lucky, but we got
You
there.
were 2 games over 500, but you were over 500. I wasn't even over 500.
No, you had a rough year. For me to beat you, considering you're a much better gambler than I am, I
No.
was surprised, but I was happy.
I can play poker with the best of them. I cannot gamble sports. I lose all the time. I lost $3,000 on a national championship that was supposed to be in the bag.
Yeah.
So we cannot sit here and say, and I don't even know if I can play poker very well anymore. I haven't gambled in a very long time. But when it
Well-
comes to picking sports games, I am not good at this.
But
But we're going to try this
We're going to
year.
give it a shot again.
So, again, we give a disclaimer every week we do this. If you take our picks and put the money on the teams we choose, that's your fault.
Exactly. You are more foolish than we think. So, week 1, let's start it off.
All right.
Good game. Baltimore at Kansas City.
Yeah. Baltimore, Lamar Jackson coming off his MVP season. They still have a really good team. The question is what is the evolution of Lamar Jackson going to be like? I've said this a couple times on this show now. He needs to transition in the same way Michael Vick transitioned, where when he came back to football, he was much more of a pocket passer. We haven't seen that transition from Lamar, but he is going to start to slow down soon. He's getting older. If he can make that transition, I think he's going to have another good year and could go back-to-back MVPs. If he doesn't, this Baltimore team is going to be in trouble this year. Kansas City, I can't pick against Kansas City until I see something different on the field. You still have Andy Reid. You still have Patrick Mahomes. And as long as Travis Kelce is healthy, they're going to have another run at a Super Bowl. Kansas City's going to win this game.
And I'm taking Kansas City as well. Next game up, big games. The Rams at Detroit.
You keep picking this as a big game. I don't know how big of a game this is going to be.
I think the Rams are going to be really good this year. I picked them to win the NFC West.
You did. And I think they're going to be better this year, but there's still a lot of question marks. You have Matthew Stafford, who's healthy now. You have Cooper Kupp, who's back, and Puka Nacua, who had proved last year how good he can actually be.
Mm-hmm.
The defense is the question mark. You've lost Aaron Donald, and it's the one loss in the NFL that nobody is talking about. You just lost a first ballot Hall of Fame defensive lineman, and people are acting like it's not that big of a deal.
It's a huge deal. That's why I'm taking Detroit in this game.
I am also taking Detroit. Detroit has to win this year.
This is their window.
They need to win the Super Bowl because the Packers are about to become the Packers again. You have Chicago. They could end up being a pretty good team. I gag a little bit when I say that, but it's possible. And I think that the Vikings are going to be a better team than people think. I said this last week. The Vikings are a scary team because they could easily win 10 games this year. So Detroit has to win this year. Detroit is my pick as well.
All right. Next game up, we've got Houston at Indianapolis.
It's going to be Houston. I mean, Houston's going to win this game pretty big.
Will it?
We don't know what Anthony Richardson is. We saw flashes of what he was last year. He doesn't know how to slide, and until he learns that, we don't really know what he's going to be.
You still have Jonathan Taylor, OE of the funky eggshell helmet. I'm not telling him he shouldn't wear it. It's just different.
Listen, I made my point a couple of weeks ago. I think that is going to lead, if not more head injuries to the people wearing it, I think it's going to lead to more head injuries to the people who don't wear them because it's another false sense of security. And I don't see concussions going down because of those, because I think they're just going to lead with their head more.
We're going to find out. I'm actually going to take Indianapolis in this game.
You're out of your mind.
Going to try it.
Houston just added Stephon Diggs as another weapon to go with Nico Collins and Tank Bell. They have CJ Stroud from
Big Ten,
the Ohio State University. They have a defensive-minded coach who put together a hell of a defense for a team that shouldn't have had a defense that looked like that. Houston's going to win this one, and I don't even think it's going to be that close.
Okay, fair enough. I still think Indy's going to pull off the upset.
Could be.
Got the Jets at San Francisco.
Aaron Rodgers back again.
My only question is, will he make it to 5 plays this year?
I think he'll make it to 5.
Okay.
That was America saying, you made fun of us and then ran out with the American flag. No, I don't even know if that's true. That's me making stuff up. But
Rodgers with a chip on his shoulder.
It's Aaron Rodgers, man. I don't know what the Niners are going to be. I really don't. You got Brandon Ayuk, and I think they're going to be a good team as the year goes on, but Brandon Ayuk hasn't practiced.
Right.
Trent Williams, they're working on signing him. It hasn't been done yet, but apparently they're getting that done, so he's going to be back in the fold pretty quick here. I just don't know if they're going to be ready yet because you have a big weapon at wide receiver and your top offensive tackle, one of the best offensive tackles in the league, who's 36, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to work in week 1. I think the Jets are ready to go. I think Aaron Rodgers, like you said, has a chip on his shoulder, and I don't bet against Aaron Rodgers. So the Jets are going to win this one.
Here's my concern about Ayuk, and how many times have we seen a guy who holds out, comes back, and what happens in the first game?
He's hurt.
Hamstring goes.
Not used to being hit, not used to running in that sense. It's going... I mean, it could go bad. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could.
I think it's going to be a very close game, but I think because it's at San Francisco, I'm going to take San Francisco at home.
All right.
In the final game, we go down to Brazil, where they speak Portuguese.
What kind of accent that was?
It was not a good one, whatever it was. We got the Packers.
To do a Jamaican, Spanish, German accent there?
I don't know what Portuguese accent sounds like. Green Bay at Philly. Bad. Stop it. Green Bay at Philly.
Green Bay's wearing green, which apparently you're not supposed to do, so well done, Philly.
I think it's going to be because it's 140 degrees down there.
It's very smart to make the Packers wear green. It is outdoor.
Although I don't know if it's going to be... How hot is it supposed to be in Brazil?
I have no idea.
It's going to be warm.
It's hot. I mean, it's by the equator. I'm assuming it's going to be Florida weather, if not a little hotter. I don't know. Geography and me don't get along.
Again, Who are you taking in the game?
I don't know what the Eagles are going to be this year.
I don't think
You
anybody
have
does yet.
a coach that easily could have been fired at the end of last year because the team completely fell apart.
Mhm.
You have Jalen Hurts, and talking with Russ last week, I agree with him. Jalen Hurts, you lost Jason Kelsey, who's a first ballot Hall of Fame center. You don't have the cheating with the tush push because he definitely leaned more forward than he should have. But besides that, you have a new center who doesn't know the cadence with that same offensive line. That is the quarterback of the offensive line. And losing that is a big deal when it comes to chaining coverage when blitzes were coming in. I don't know what Jalen Hurts can really do. You got Saquon Barkley.
Right.
You got A.J. Brown still. You definitely have weapons, but I just
Green Bay's
don't.
got brand new defense.
And then that defense is going to take a few weeks
Yeah.
to really get installed. It was a struggle in preseason to watch them. Granted, a lot of their starters weren't there. But we saw this when we made this switch under what's-his-face how many years ago? Not Mike Pettin,
Dom
the guy
Capers.
before. Don Capers. You're right.
Dom Capers.
Yes. But we saw this then, and it took a while for the defense to get used to it. We're going to have to see that same thing here. I don't pick against the Packers unless I really have to. I'm taking the Packers in this one, and seriously, because I don't think the Eagles are going to be a great team this year.
Well, I think he's going to take a step back.
Jordan Love?
No, Hurts.
Jalen Hurts?
Jalen Hurts, sorry. He's going to take a step back. And if he takes a step back, the Eagles take a step back.
Yeah.
So I'm taking the Packers because I think their offense will just be better. And they'll outscore them. It'll be a close game. But I think, and now we've got a new field goal kicker, Narver's son or whatever his name is.
I'm excited for him. Did you hear what Matt LaFleur came out and said after the first couple practices?
I did not.
He said,
He's not praying anymore?
he's like, I got all the confidence in the world. The guy made all but one kick. He went like 6 for 6 the first practice, and he went 5 for 6 the next practice.
Sure. I've seen a lot of guys make kicks in practice.
This guy almost beat out Nick Folk for the starting job
I know.
in Tennessee. This is a much better situation than what we walked into the season with.
I'm hoping it's one that actually, if a game's on the line, LaFleur's not saying a prayer before he kicks.
I've said it 1,000 times. I don't need my field goal kicker to make 60-yard field goals. I don't. I just need him to be automatic from inside 50.
Exactly.
Or at least automatic from inside 40. The rest is up to the offense.
I'll even take 45. Let's cut it in the middle.
Sure.
Just be automatic from there, and the rest will take care of itself. Make a 60-yarder every once in a while.
If you have to get in a situation where you have to make a 60-yard field goal, then the offense puts you in a bad situation.
It's going to happen.
You need to be able to, if the offense gets you a 45-yard field goal, you have to be able to make that kick. Bottom line, end of story.
And you have to make your extra points. Automatic.
It would be really nice
Down the middle.
to see somebody that doesn't miss 9 extra
Where
points.
you're going every time you see the ball go because you think it's going to go way right or way left.
Yeah, that was a rough season when it came
was.
to special teams in general. I think it's going to be good this year. I'm taking the Packers because remember, folks, all you need is love.
The Beatles are going to hunt us down and start charging us for that.
Nah, they're Packer fans.
Well, Packers are America's team, so maybe.
There it is. You and I have had a heck of a show, but as you all know, you cannot have a conversation with your father without your dad getting the last word. So it is all you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm going to end it on a sad note. Last week, the NHL lost Johnny Gaudreau, and Johnny Gaudreau also lost his brother, Matthew. They were in town for their sister's wedding. The day before their wedding, some moron drunk hits them both and kills them. We're in 2024, folks. If you're going to drink, don't drive. Call a cab. Call an Uber. Do something. And if you're a friend of these morons that are been drinking that much, take their keys. Do whatever you can. 3 families have been destroyed. One of the kids had 2 small children. The other one had a wife who was 7 months pregnant. A mother and father lost their 2 sons. Their sister lost her brothers. Trust me, this is not ever going to be okay in those families again. Kids are growing up without their fathers. It should never happen. Drinking and driving is never funny. It's not a joke. It's not cool. Don't be that idiot. That's it.
It's a sad situation.
It is. I heard about it, and then on top of it, comes out today the guy actually works in a rehab facility. If you're in a rehab facility, you should know better. I mean,
we see it time and time again. Drunk driving ruins people's lives, and it's never the drunk driver that pays the ultimate price.
Doesn't seem to be. It's always an innocent bystander, and these guys were just out riding their bikes, getting some exercise.
If you need help with drinking, please make sure you contact somebody to get help, or call a ride if you're out and about. We have Uber today, and there's no reason to go out drinking and driving. And really, like you said, ruin people's lives.
Yep.
Thank you so much, as always, for watching. This has been Sports Talk with Dad. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.